Hello. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to Life with Parkinson's, a panel discussion. My name is Rosa Pena, and I'm the Vice President of Programs and Services at APDA.
And my name is Anushka Sheel, and I'm the National Director of Programs and Services with APDA.
So now we would love to introduce our panel. First, we have Luis Torrez, who is from Montebello area of Los Angeles. He worked in the transportation and logistics industry for 33 years and retired in July 2023. In 2018, Luis was diagnosed with PD after experiencing symptoms 1 to 2 years prior. Welcome, Luis.
Thank you. Hello.
And Helena Rodriquez is a person with Parkinson's disease diagnosed in 2010. She retired from social work in 2015 and is an advocate raising awareness of the needs of families and people affected by Parkinson's disease. Welcome, Helena.
And for more than 25 years, Rabbi Simkha Weintraub has integrated Jewish spiritual and mental health approaches to support those facing illness, loss, and trauma. He was diagnosed with PD 13 years ago. Welcome, Rabbi Simkha.
Thank you.
And now we're going to just jump right in. We're so grateful for this wonderful panel who will be sharing their stories and answering your questions and questions from the audience about PD. So I believe I'll turn it over to Anushka.
Yes, and this question is for all of you. What are some things that you do every day or most days to address your emotional and mental well-being as you live with Parkinson's?
Ladies first, Helena.
Oh, you want ladies first? Okay. I wasn't sure. What I do every day, I do a lot of things. But the first thing is I say good morning to everybody in the household, which is not that many. But my dogs are important. So I say good morning and I think about what I'm going to do that day or whatever day it is. That's mainly what I do. I do things like also like little like breathing and saying, thinking about what happened the day before that was positive, or if, whatever. So that's what I do.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
So starting on a positive note.
Yes.
Perfect. This is Luis. Good afternoon, everybody. I pretty much exercise. For me, exercise is very key to my well-being. I've learned that I've always been pretty active my whole life, but since I got diagnosed in 2018, I've made it a priority to make sure I exercise. I exercise usually about 4 or 5 days a week, and that usually helps me kind of get the day going. It perks me up. It gets my joints all oiled up. Because like many of you, getting up in the morning is sometimes difficult because of stiffness. But I find that the exercise really helps me quite a bit, and I also reach out to family and friends. And then there's an app called Elevate. It's more of a cognitive app that I use. I don't do it daily, but I do it a couple times a week. That helps me just with like random numbers, sentences. It motivates you how fast you can answer some things, so it actually helps me quite a bit. So that's the kind of things I do to help me keep me going for the day and start the day as well too.
I'd have to start with family also. For one thing, I'm lucky to have a great partner. My wife has been with me for a long time and really puts up with a lot, and also helps us so much. So for me, family is the first stage, but then there's also a community and friends. And I realize I'm a part of 3 communities. There's a Parkinson's community that I'm a part of online. And then there's also the building that I live in, the community, and also the synagogue where I go to. So I'm very fortunate to have community support around me. And then I would also mention exercise and some other things, but we're going to get into that later, I think.
Great. Thank you. And, you have mentioned exercise, all of you, and family. So I also wanted to ask, has having Parkinson's introduced you to any new things, new people, new experiences?
I guess I'll go first since I'm the ladies first. Um, I have been introduced to so many things because of Parkinson's that I actually feel that it's a positive thing to have Parkinson's. Because I like to learn and I like to help people, and I've been able to do that with Parkinson's. Uh, I learned, for example, to paint, and my paintings were a couple of them were taken to Italy to be
Nice.
at a place in Florence.
Awesome.
So I would never have done that otherwise. So I think of sometimes Parkinson's as a blessing. It's a pain in the neck too because it's predictably unpredictable. You never know how you're going to be when you wake up.
Yeah. Along the same lines, for me, I think I've met some incredible people that I wouldn't have met if I didn't have Parkinson's.
Yeah.
Some very, very strong people, warriors, people who just fight the good fight every single day. And that gives me a lot of also optimism and kind of good feelings that, moving forward, I met some people that have had Parkinson's for 20, 30 years and they're still up and going. And it's very admirable. So I don't think I would have met these people without this. And again, there's a certain reason why this condition happened and why I got this condition. But whatever that is, I think I'm along the right path in my career, in my life.
I was never one to exercise, and in fact, the word for a Jewish day school is yeshiva, which literally means sitting. and I was really good at sitting. And when I got Parkinson's, my neurologist suggested very actively that I go swimming, but it wasn't accessible to a pool. So I started walking. And the first morning I remember I got up at 5:30 or 6 and I walked 6 blocks. This is in Brooklyn. And then I walked 7 blocks. Anyway, I grew to 2 miles and I was very, very proud of that. And that led me to all kinds of other things. It led me to ultimately to learn how to swim, basic swimming. And I now do yoga and boxing and NIA twice a week. I should just mention that I was in New York at the very beginning of my, for a good 10 years before I moved to Philadelphia to retire. And I stayed in touch with the Parkinson's wellness community in New York. And I'm there 4 days a week by Zoom, doing yoga, boxing, and NIA online. And it's because I can't let it go to the great people in the community. They're just wonderful.
I'd like to add, if you don't mind. I think exercises, there's different exercises for everybody. Everyone has different form of exercise. People walk, some people do boxing, some people do cardio. I think as long as you're moving, I think that's the best thing, right? As long as you're moving, exercise is going to be different for everybody. But I do a lot of body weight exercises, resistance bands, dumbbell weights, push-ups, pull-ups, and that keeps me active. But if you do boxing, I haven't done boxing yet, but I've heard that that's really good for people as well too, especially with your motor skills. So I think just whatever works for everybody, it's different. But as long as you're moving, that helps.
Yes.
So I think what we hear is that your life does change once you have a diagnosis of Parkinson's, but there's a lot of new opportunities for connection with different communities that you're finding, and those are very strong bonds to continue to be connected to people. And so I wanted to ask you, can you tell us how the story of how you found purpose, or your purpose was redefined after your diagnosis with PD, or your retirement, or that big change in your life? How did you redirect that for yourself?
Okay. I was a social worker before, and I'm also a kind of person that works a lot. So I ended, like, for example, there was a period of time where I had three jobs, one full time and two part time, and the part times were like full time. But so when I retired, I had a void there, and I wasn't sure what to do. In the beginning of the process of having Parkinson's, I did a lot of reading and learning as much as I could, and then I decided to do some advocacy. So I saw that there was a request for people to go to Washington, and I applied for the thing. I don't want to say it's a job because I didn't get paid, but and so what it was going down to Washington and meeting with your legislator and congressperson, and with the goal in mind of telling them about Parkinson's, to try to increase funding, or actually to get funding for Parkinson's research. And I learned a lot, but the thing I remember most was the first day I was there, they had breakfast. So I walked into the dining hall, and I saw 300 or more people with Parkinson's. And the first thing that came to my mind was, my people. So it's like I found a tribe, and it was the Parkinson's advocates. And I still see some people online to this day that I met like 3 or 4 years ago.
So, what, Helena? What advice do you have for someone at home that's hearing you share about your desire to move forward with advocacy? If they want to get involved, what would you suggest to them?
Well, I would suggest for them to, for one of the people that they could call is the American Parkinson's Disease Association.
Yay.
And I'm sure that people have different ideas of what is available. Their other foundations are just as well good. I think you have to know what you can do. You could do a lot of things. You could do like very small thing like writing a letter, to a very large thing like planning this kind of a thing. It all depends on you and what you're able to do. But I think the important thing is to do something. And part of the advocacy is also getting involved in some of the clinical trials, because they need people to be the guinea pig, so they can figure out what they might be able to do to find the cure. There is a cure. I don't know if I'm going to be there watching it in my lifetime, but I know that there's a cure, and it's going to come, and hopefully it'll come soon. Maybe for my grandchildren.
Thank you.
I think for me, regarding your question, Rosa, is I think when I was first diagnosed, it was like a gut punch, a punch to the gut. I wasn't expecting it. I was 53 at the time, and so it was really, it really was a downer, for lack of a better word. But I remember the one thing that the neurologist told me, my first neurologist told me was, she said, "This is not good news, but just remember, you're not going to die because of Parkinson's, you'll die with it." And for me, that was like a very interesting way of looking at it, because at first I thought it was a death sentence when I first found out, right? I didn't know much about Parkinson's other than Michael J. Fox, right? But when she told me that, it kind of something clicked, and it gave me a different purpose in life. Being, I'm going to fight on with this. It's not the end of the world, and I think as I've met people, but that really stuck with me, and I think for me that gave me a lot of hope and optimism to kind of keep going. And so, and again, as I said earlier, I've met people with had Parkinson's for 30 years, are still walking with their walkers, they're active, and so this is not a death sentence. It's just something, a bump in the road, unfortunately. But for the most part, I think this is something that speaking for myself, that it's just something that I'll have to deal with and manage. And again, have a great support network is very important, not only through the APDA, but family and friends as well too. So that for me was kind of like clicked in my head.
And Luis, I know you mentioned before that advocacy and being involved in your community, bringing your community together was important to you. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, just like Helena, I was living in Florida. I just recently moved back to California, but I've been in Florida for the last 20 plus years. And after I got diagnosed, we all go through a certain type of exercises and doctor meetings. And one of them was the Speak Out group, or Talk Loud, I guess what it is. And in Weston, in the Cleveland Clinic, they have a group of people that meet every week. And it's been very, very helpful for me. But one thing I noticed, that the majority of the people that were attending the group were men. And one thing I identified was that, again, speaking as a man, I think we tend to share probably more openly with other men, or just maybe have a discussion about politics or whatever it is, but just have a group of men meet. And so I started a group every Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern time, where we just meet via phone, via Zoom, and just talk, see how everybody's doing, what support that we can give each other. And I think aside from that, I want to get more involved, obviously with APDA or with other organizations. I feel that I was like when I was young, I still have a lot of energy, thank God. And I think it's important for me to get engaged and support other people. And again, also with the Latin community as well too, at the Hispanic community, I think it's important as well too, because as a Hispanic male, there are certain men that don't like to share, or are afraid of sharing, or afraid of really coming out and saying, I have this condition. So I think it's important to have that open space of networking, so we can understand each other. So yeah, I think that's important as well too. So hopefully I get more engaged with the APDA as time goes on. But that's.
So what I'm hearing from Luis and from Helena is that advocacy really can start just with one person making one action, and that can just ripple out and change lives of themselves and the people around them. And I also had a question for Simkha. I know you have shared that you have been living with type 1 diabetes, and I wanted to ask, because this is something we get a question about a lot at APDA, how does having type 1 diabetes impact or affect your life with Parkinson's?
For me to acknowledge that type 1 diabetes, which is insulin dependent, and Parkinson's don't get along very well. They really compete in some very basic ways. That I had to up my control of my diabetes, as well as my management of Parkinson's. So the issue, for example, was that eating, you're not supposed to eat a half hour after you take the medication for Parkinson's, and you're not supposed to eat until an hour after a meal, after having a meal. So that really collided with my diabetes management, those two things. And so besides involving my neurologist and endocrinologist, one thing that I'm hoping will be helpful is DBS, deep brain stimulation, because there I won't be as dependent on medication as I will be able to go with brain stimulation. So that will be a big help, I believe. For me, it's all about perspective. I want to say this in terms of Rosa's question. It's all about perspective. Neither one of those things, as Luis said, are necessarily going to kill me, or but they're challenges. And with my wife's help and with learning about the illnesses and how to manage them, I can go far. And I have to say that my father had Parkinson's, and his sister, my dear Aunt Bryna, had Parkinson's, and they lived into the mid 90s with Parkinson's. God bless them. So I wouldn't mind that. and my father took physical therapy very seriously. So that's a good role model for me.
I want to change the topic a little bit and ask Helena and Simkha. Some people with PD have a family or genetic link to disease in their family. Could you tell us a little bit more about your experience with that? I know prior you had shared something to that effect.
I am the product of a mother and father who their brothers and sister married to each other. So I have my father's brother and my mother's sister in one family. They had 15 kids amongst them.
Wow.
Of the 15, 5 of them here came down with Parkinson's so far. Wow. So there's something, but I took the 23andMe and this PPMI or whatever it's called, and all the tests that I've done through the Parkinson's group, people, didn't show any kind of link that there was, but I know that there must be. So but what's sad is like with my family, we had an issue with my parents are from another country, and this country is one that has been left, like Cuba. So there's like the family split up, and there's family in Cuba and there's family in the United States, and so that to get the people together to have the DNA done is not easy. It's possible, but not easy.
Simkha, did you have something to add about the topic of genetics and PD?
Yes, it's interesting. I learned that I have the LRRK2 gene, and that explained, according to my neurologist at the time, that explained why I had it easy for a number of years. In other words, there's a certain number of people with LRRK2 gene who get by without many symptoms or serious symptoms. So I had a right leg that kept bouncing, but that was about it. So so that was the good news about my genes. The other thing is that when I think about genes, I also think about the genes that cause a good sense of humor, or the genes that cause a positive outlook, or the genes that cause the ability to sing a tune. And I think that's as much a reality as the genes that cause Parkinson's.
True. We have a couple of questions that came into the chat, but one that we were going to ask you, Luis, anyway, which is you were diagnosed with PD at 53, and you were still in your career with transportation and logistics. So what impact did the diagnosis have on your work life? And someone asked in the chat, how did you know it was time, to stop working? How did you make that decision?
I think initially when I got diagnosed, I lost a lot of weight, like 20 pounds, within the first year. So people started to notice, at work, and but thankfully at that time I was still very active. I was traveling quite a bit with work to Latin America. And it wasn't until probably like the third year into it that I started noticing my handwriting just like really small, and I could barely read it myself. I noticed that I wasn't as energetic. You know, I'd be fatigued by like 1, 2 o'clock. I was falling asleep in front of my computer. On conference call, my boss would send me a text and say, "Hey, are you okay? You're falling asleep." So I mean, little things start to just add up, and you know, it didn't help as well too that the company had acquired another company where my position was unfortunately eliminated. But I chose at that time to, you know, just hang up the cleats, because I wasn't being as productive as I knew I could be, and I was missing deadlines as well too. So I think a lot of things were kind of writing on the wall, and just realized that it was time to move on. And I probably could have worked, but I just didn't feel confident enough in myself that this was something that I could be doing, especially with the stress. I was having a lot of stress as well too with work. And I think that anxiety has added up as well. So yeah.
I actually have another question for Luis that someone put in the Q&A. A couple of people have asked, how do we get more information on your group? Is it open for other people to join?
Yeah, again, it's a men's group, but I guess, you know, we can open it up. But yeah, it's if you go into my bio, I have my phone number there and my email. If you're interested, just give me a call and I'll send you the link, the Zoom link. And again, it's 3 p.m. Eastern time every Monday. Again, right now we probably have about 10 or 12 people on the call. Consistently, about 6, 7 show up every week. But yeah, they can get that information through my bio, and I'll include them or forward them the information.
Thank you. And this question is actually for all of you. People have asked, do you still drive? And if not, what was the deciding factor that you shouldn't drive?
I'll just say, coming from New York, I didn't have to drive. And now living in Philadelphia, I still don't have to drive because, believe it or not, the senior citizens get free transportation in Philadelphia. And so, and also I have developed friends who go places that and I go along. So I really did have to stop driving a few years ago, and it was not an easy thing. But on the other hand, I was never in love with driving, so sorry, Luis, of transportation. If
No worries.
Anyway. So we get by. We get by well. So.
I think you have to unmute, Helena. I think you muted yourself again.
No, somebody's. Ooh, there we go.
Yes,
right.
There you go.
So I would say I'm selective with driving. I won't drive at night. I had cataracts taken, done, so I have difficulty with the oncoming cars coming, so I don't drive at night unless I really have to. And it's like maybe once a year. I try not to drive in bad weather because I don't need that. And I tend to be careful what roads I'm going to go on. I don't like driving where I'm going to run into people who are trucks, like the highways, like 95 and 84 or whatever, because they drive so fast. It's just like, it's not my cup of tea. So I'm very selective in my driving. At the moment, I'm trying to find what's in my area for getting rides. So when I find them, I won't be driving anymore.
I still drive almost every day. I tend to not drive within certain hours because I notice that I get sleepy. So between like 11 to 2, somewhere in there, I try not to drive, or at least force myself not to drive, because I've fallen asleep. I caught myself falling asleep on a stoplight and people honking, so I tried to do that. But I actually ended up checking off a bucket list. I had a bucket list of driving cross country in my motorcycle when I used to have a motorcycle. But I had to sell my motorcycle after I got diagnosed. And so what I ended up doing by November of last year, I drove cross country from Florida back to LA. And it took me 9 days to do it, but I did it on my own. And I was very proud of myself because that was an event of itself. And I was able to visit some friends along the way. So I really enjoyed it. But again, I still drive, thankfully, and hopefully I'll continue to drive. But when the time comes, I'll know.
It's a good
What
way
an
to.
adventure.
Yes, that is quite an adventure. Kudos to you. So, life goes on, and it's sometimes it's like these small detours that you have to take, and then you're on a path and you just keep going. On that note, there was someone asked in the chat, do you have a certain mantra that you tell yourself to just keep going, being positive and to keep going? What would you say that is for you?
Well, this is not Parkinson's related, but I saw an interview of a gentleman who was 105 years old, and the reporter asked him, what's the secret to life? And in his own words, basically said, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift.
It's nice.
And I remember that only because we all kind of, I'll speak for myself, look back about what if, what could have been, or tomorrow, what plans do we have? But if we focus on today, and when I when I get out of bed and I set my 2 feet on the ground, my knees are hurting, my shoulders are hurting, but I'm up, and I think, that's why I tend to look at it that way, that today's a gift and we should seize the moment every day.
That's a good one. How about you, Helena?
I have two mantras in a sense. One of them is the serenity prayer. God grant me God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So whenever I come up with a problem, that prayer comes to me, and it helps me find the solution to my problem. The other one is something that I learned as a Girl Scout many moons ago. And that's a song about looking for the silver lining when a cloud appears in the blue. Somewhere the sun is shining. It's just the right thing to do. I can't remember. I have the rest of it. I have to think. I have to sing, and I don't want to sing. because if I sing, you're all going to be shutting me down. But it's a very nice song. It was from the 1930s.
Okay, we'll look for that one.
So those are the two things that I do it at least once every day. I'll switch back and forth, but those are my mantras.
That's a good one.
I'll just add that I was thinking the other day how Parkinson's is a moving target. That both in terms of the research and in terms of the reality of it, it's a moving target. So I'm going to move with it. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move with it.
Yes, that's a good way to look at it too. I'm going to turn it over to Anushka. I think she will. Do you have one more question? I think we have time for one more.
Yes, we have one more. Someone has asked, how do you deal with people who may ask uncomfortable or intrusive questions about your symptoms?
I just answer the question. If it's a hard question, I answer it because the rest must be asking it for a reason. And maybe that minute that I'm with them is the minute that I'm supposed to have with them to help, change their world or change mine.
Thank you. That was like a very gracious thing to say.
It is.
Mhm.
Especially if you're not having a good day that
Yeah.
day. It's hard sometimes to stay positive and just be kind. But I think sometimes people ask those questions. Maybe they're curious, or maybe they don't know enough, and they just don't know how to ask. I always think someone said to me one time, you always want to err on the side of grace. That most people they're just trying, and sometimes it may not be the best delivery, but I think maybe it's an opportunity for maybe to educate them. Maybe they don't know anyone with Parkinson's, so maybe they think, well, this is what a person with Parkinson's is like, or what they should be doing. And so it's such an opportunity, I think, for them to see that life continues and that you all are so resilient that you found a way to move with the target. Like Rabbi Simkha said, just move with the target, and you have to keep going. And what's the alternative? Social isolation, as Maureen was talking a little earlier, that you have found this community, this amazing community of people that care and want to walk beside you, and are just, a phone call or a Zoom call away, and getting together. It's really a very resilient community. And I think we have a few minutes. Anushka and I wanted to ask you all, as parting advice for those that are, listening to you today, what advice would you share with the PD community and the care partners that are watching right now and listening to you? What last minute advice would you give them? Who wants to go first? Luis? Luis looks like he
Sure.
just wants to go.
No, I'll go. I think there's a I'm forget where I saw it, but this iceberg, it's like a picture of an iceberg, and people will see only what they see from the outside, right? There's a lot of symptoms underneath the water there that people don't see, like the sense of smell, your writing, and certain things that see. And I think more than anything for me is just be understanding and be kind to one another. So I think it's important, and it's kind of what Helena said. If someone asks something, be gracious, and just they don't know any better. They don't know what's going on, just like I don't know what's going on with them. And I think for the most part, I think it's just be kind and understanding to one another, and be there for support. I think that's the best thing that we can do.
It's good advice.
Thank you.
I would say, my dog is over here. I would say to them, wait 20 minutes, because things change in 20 minutes. The carbo levodopa takes effect. Things change in 20 minutes, and you just could go on once it's done.
Good advice.
And not to be worried about it. It is what it is.
Rabbi, we have a few seconds left. What would you?
We can't hear you. Could you please unmute for us?
I was muted. I would say that in a polite way, that I don't need help as much as I need time. And so, there are times when people really do want to help, and that's wonderful. But sometimes you don't want the help, but you need the time. And so if there's a good way to say that, I would say that.
It's a great advice. I like that. Thank you so much. Thank you all for sharing your personal journey with us and giving all this fantastic advice that I think we can all use. So thank you so much for our wonderful panelists for coming together from around the country and sharing your lived experience with the Parkinson's community and with us too. We truly appreciate each and one of you. Additionally, thank you for everyone at home for joining us on this panel and sharing your questions. So please take a moment to answer our post-event survey, which will appear at the end of the closing of this program today. And now to close out our first day, please welcome back President and CEO of APDA, Leslie Chambers.